one of the things that we've spent the past 10 years, I've spent about a decade in the agricultural value chain, and we've worked with over 1 million farmers. And during this period, working with 1 million farmers, these 1 million farmers have been serving a bunch of off-takers, let's say 200 to about 250 of them, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa. But one of the things we notice that exists between these farmers that is quite large, and think about it, Nigeria has about 45 to sometimes even 50, depends on what your data point is, 50 million farmers that exist in Nigeria. And that amount of farmers in Africa is over 200 million, right? And many say 300 million in Africa, right? Now think about it. There is a wide world of difference that exists between the millions and hundreds of millions of farmers in one end, and also the off-takers who buy their goods. And I'm talking about goods, most of the goods that we all know. Maize, rice, soya beans, sorghum, all of the things that you might mention. I mean, maybe the popular you might know, maybe some of you have eaten rice today or yesterday. Rice. Now, these are produced by the farmers. But guess what? The off-takers who we know, I don't want to mention some unique names, they enjoy a lot more economic prosperity. Sometimes we should ask the question, why? The answer to that question is simple. We all know that. It's value, right? So, answering the question is not enough, right? It's what to do about that answer that is the difference between the prosperous, in this case, the prosperous, which is the off-taker, and the not so prosperous, right? So, the massive dichotomy that exists in prosperity and scarcity is what we have to answer. There's how to think during surplus, and then there's how to think during scarcity. And then if we're not able to differentiate between these two massive world of dichotomy that exists, it's going to be difficult to prosper, right? Now, a ton of maize. How many of you know how much is sold? If you are doing agriculture, you should know. A ton of maize is sold at 640,000 naira. And one of the most economically viable byproducts of a ton of maize is cornstarch. Maybe many of you will know maize used for animal feeds and cornflakes. But however, if you think about what that ton of maize produces in ton value, 640 metric ton of raw maize versus a ton of maybe cornstarch, that's about 2.7 million, nearly 3 million naira. That's close to 300% over increase. Now that is maize. Now, cocoa. Cocoa is many of you might not have seen a pod of cocoa before. What you may have seen is chocolate, right? Right? But maybe you saw cocoa on the internet. But a ton, multiple pods of cocoa cost about 30 million naira. But at the point where value is added to cocoa, what do you see? You see a massive increase. Now you notice that there are about 4,000 units of regular chocolate that can make, give or take, a ton thereabout of chocolate. And that's like 90 million in total. Compare 13 million versus 90 million. That's close to over 1,000% increase. As of today, the market price of soya beans is 1.2, 1.4 million naira. What is soya beans used for? Does anyone know? Soya beans. You should all be farmers. I think that should be my topic. You should all be farmers. Soya beans is used for soya bean oil, soya bean meal, quite a number of things. And then refined soybean oil is used for frying chicken, frying many of the things that we do today. Right? How much is refined soybean meal, or refined soybean oil? Does anyone have an idea? That's about 4.7 million. And this is a 1.2 raw soybeans. Now, these are really, really overwhelming figures. Now, at the point of the local market, the farmer is selling at a pretty good margin. What's our story in ThriveAgric? We started working with farmers to trade, to buy goods. And we noticed that that was not enough. Right? That was not just enough. Until, scarcity, we saw the mass amount of scarcity and the mass amount of economic advantage. Nobody had to school us to know that value had to be added to products for us to make massive economic outcome. The reason why I'm mentioning this to us is all of these figures affect every single aspect of our life. There is a massive multiplier effect at the point where value is added. Massive, massive multiplier effect. Again, massive multiplier effect. If we think as a nation and we are satisfied for the fact that we just discovered crude oil, how many years ago? I think it's about over 60, 50 years now. And we get satisfied for the fact that we have a lot of crude. Guess what? Newsflash, there are quite a number of nations who, maybe 5 years, in fact, a month ago, some nation just discovered crude. And it keeps increasing. And what happens? When the factors of demand and supply begin to play in, and you don't have relevance. Now, when you think about this as a young person, the course you are doing, or, the role you play in an office, at the point when value is not obtained, then you notice that there is no economic outcome at all. Zero many times, or little. We know largely that economic outcome comes at the point where massive value is added to products. But then what do we do to make sure that we scale up on the economic radar? One thing that is very important that I've been able to outline, I've outlined 3 steps. 1, identify your raw material. As much as I spoke about, it was good news in Nigeria when we identified crude oil. It's always good news to identify that there's a problem to solve. It's always good news to know that if I'm able to make soap, right? Or maybe not able to make soap, I have something, a pencil that somebody in this room needs, right? And I give the person, and I make 5 naira from that. It's great. It's a great discovery, right? And my job here is not to sabotage that discovery. My job here is to quench the dissatisfaction and to increase the reason why we should want more. There's one thing that exists in our continent today. We have been called as the country with geographical surplus, right? It is not exciting to be a geographical surplus continent. Many times people rejoice in the fact that we have the most thriving young population. That's good, but that's good in a context. But regardless of this stereotype, potential doesn't matter until there is economic advantage. The fact that you have a potential to do something, it is zero, except potential turns kinetic, as I hear someone say. Right? The potential of Africa has to turn to kinetic, and that's when it comes to what we have to do. How do we turn that? 1, as I mentioned, identify what that is. Identify what is the raw material you have. For you, it could be that budding career, right? But guess what? Newsflash, there are quite a number of people that can have that. And again, you can be broke when a lot of people do have that. And then what do we do after identifying and identifying. The next point is you need to desire for more. We need to desire for more. And what does that desire mean? How can we have more seats on the table? An example, we noticed at ThriveAgric. We started working, this is about 10 years ago, working with farmers, trading, buying goods from one farmer, from multiple farmers, and selling. But we noticed that we needed to be able to control two things, quality and quantity, for us to be able to have a price negotiation with the off-takers we were speaking with. And we noticed that trade was not just enough. We were selling a lot of goods. We were buying a lot of goods, but margin was really ridiculous. It didn't make any sense. Right? So what did we do? Because honestly, trading should be done. Why? Trading, that transaction helps you understand the value chain. Right? It's just like if you are selling clothes, you understand the cotton that is needed, you understand quite a number of elementary parts for you to be able to ask, should I move back in the value chain or should I move forward so that I can make more margin? Now, it moves me to my most primary point, desire for more. It is not greed, guys, to want more. But guess what? The question is how? Until value is increased, economic outcome cannot be seen. So how do you do that? Leverage. We notice that there's a big problem with assessing some of the large factories we worked with. We figured that a lot of factories their supply chain was pretty much broken. Most of them were moribund. If they were going to scale up or do 100% supply, they needed to partner a lot more. So one of the things we decided to do was to have conversations with these people and to see how we could supply a lot more, produce primarily for them, so that we can have some level of price negotiation, not only price negotiation, but also a further equity in whatever outcome. Think about it in clearer terms. You produce rice, we supply paddy rice. We have tons of farmers who we finance for that. Now, we don't just want to trade the rice to you because you are going to give us 2 or 3%. It ends there. But then, we have to have a negotiation with you. You are going to process what now? Raw rice to everybody here. So what kind of conversation can we have to be able to ensure that we are making not the 2%, but a higher margin? We don't necessarily now have to create the factory or build the factory. We don't have that. So it begs the question as a nation, should we just be trading oil to nations around without having more negotiation? Can we supply to nations who need oil, surplus, and make a lot more margin? Now, these are questions. Are there people who we can supply most of the raw materials we have as a nation and most of the natural resources that we have? Recently, in the African Economic Meeting, it was mentioned that Africa has over $20 trillion of raw material in the ground that does not contribute to the GDP. Massive. Is there a way, instead of inviting a lot of people to work with us, we can make a lot more margin from that as a continent? Can we think about having more seats on the table? Because it is at the point we have more seats at the table, we grow economically as a continent. You as an individual, how can you have more seats at the table? Because the difference between person A is experiencing economic surplus and person B who is not is the ability to negotiate for more. And it's not greed, as I said earlier. So today, my challenge for us is, the times might be tougher than this, guys. And it's not a prophecy of doom. But this is a point where we have to innovate more. We have to think of, what is that extra value I can add to the product and the raw material? What is that extra value I can bring to my office? What is that extra value as a nation we can bring collectively? So today, I want us to oblige me rise to your feet and put your hands on your chest, please, and repeat after me. I am going to be a person of value. Thank you very much.